Hi, ladies. We are now in Acts 23. Previously, in Acts 22, we left off where Paul is before the tribune and confirms that he's indeed a Roman citizen, and this seems to change the course of events. Last week, we saw Paul share his story as a testimony. First, his previous conduct, then went on to the conviction, to his conversion, and lastly, his commission by God to take the gospel to the Gentiles. Paul is now appearing before the council and starts once again by addressing them as brothers. He does this twice, perhaps to identify with them. In today's passage, we shall look at three key areas. 1, prophetic vision. 2, plot exposed. And 3, protected passage, protected vision. As Paul addresses the council, he starts with saying that his conscience before God is clear on how he had lived his life. This is something Paul repeats several times in his epistles, and we see it again in Acts 24:16. This statement is not to be understood to mean his whole life, as we are well aware of his past, but only to the recent past and on matters for which he was charged. So Ananias orders him to be struck on the mouth, and Paul reacts by calling him a whitewashed wall, a proverbial saying to mean he was a hypocrite, like the prophets in Ezekiel 13:10, who covered a wall of loose stones with whitewash, so it appeared to be other than what it was. Paul then appears to be apologetic when he's questioned about the high priest and quotes Exodus 22:28, perhaps to show his respect for the law. A dissension then rose again with members of the Sanhedrin now taking sides. Once Paul aligned himself with the Pharisees, nothing more was to be gained in this situation, as he's now in danger of being torn to pieces, and the commander orders that he is taken into custody. Paul found himself just like Agabus had prophesied, bound and gagged, his body bruised, his countrymen despise him, and he is prevented from proclaiming the gospel as he desired. Paul must have wondered what all this would result to at this point, with 3 attempts to harm him in a short span of time. In 2 Corinthians 11:23, Paul speaks of his sufferings. If he ever needed assurance, it would be now. The Lord appeared to him in a vision and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome." This must have brought a confirmation of Paul's own conviction and desire, as he had in Acts 19:21, that he would see Rome. 2, plot exposed. The following day, a group of more than 40 Jews conspired and bound themselves by an oath to assassinate Paul. Their plan was to have Paul appear before the council again, then kill him. Luke reports how God brought evil to light, and verse 16 surprisingly introduces Paul's sister and nephew. God allows Paul's nephew to overhear the murderous plot, and he was able to warn Paul and the Roman commander. And so Paul immediately summoned a centurion to take the young man to the tribune, and so Paul was protected so he could carry out his mission in Rome. As we continue to serve God, we can have an assurance of God's plan, provision, protection over us, and have perseverance until his purpose for our lives is accomplished. 3, protected passage. Now, the Roman commander instructs the young man not to inform anyone else of these things, and then he acted at once to remove Paul from Jerusalem to Caesarea. The provision of 470 guardians, soldiers, horsemen, and spearmen shows how seriously the commander viewed Paul's protection. Luke provides information from the commander's letter to Felix, the governor, and the letter adds perspective on the situation. It begins with the writer named first, and then to the person of whom it was addressed, and then it outlines the circumstances that brought Paul into custody. As far as the commander was concerned, Paul had done nothing worthy of imprisonment, much less death, and this remains the Roman attitude as we read in Acts 26:31. The road up to Antipatris was dangerous. The first half, and inhabited by Jews, about 25 miles, while the second part was open and flat and largely inhabited by Gentiles. So perhaps why the much, the many people that needed to guide him. Once in Caesarea, the escort delivered Paul and the letter to the governor, who asked where Paul was from and decided to give him a hearing. He then ordered for Paul to be kept under guard in Herod's praetorium. Now, a praetorium was a beautiful palace, and we can assume that Paul's stay as he waited was certainly not in a bad condition, even though he was still under guard. Now, ladies, what can we learn from this? First, that those God elects to receive his saving grace also receive his presence and promise to persevere. Take courage. Second, perhaps you're in a situation right now and you may not see a way out of it, but Jesus knows. Take courage. Why? God still holds to his promise that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Take courage. Be of good cheer. And Jesus himself said that in this world we shall have trouble, but take heart, for he has overcome the world. And 1 Peter 5:10 encourages us that, after we have suffered a little while, God himself will restore us and make us strong, firm, and establish us. The key verse I see here is verse 11. Take courage. And the key thing I see is that the providence of God, a promise followed by his provision to fulfill that promise. That's what God's providence is all about. It is be encouraged that God, who has called you to follow him, will also provide and get you to where you need to be. So let us hold tight to this hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. God bless you.